Please, SCGUN. Not tonight, not again. Yetun's scream tore through the walls of their modest two-bedroom flat in Surulur, Lagos, but no one came. No one ever came on Monday nights. The neighbors had learned to turn up their televisions, close their windows, and pretend they heard nothing. It was easier that way. Welcome to Voice of Auntie Dora, where we bring you real stories of struggle, survival, and strength. Thank you so much for your incredible support, your comments, your shares, your prayers. We see you. We hear you. Before we continue, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Are you in Atlanta, London, Lagos, Kingston? Let us know. Now, back to Yetun's story, because what happens next will leave you breathless. The metallic taste of blood filled Yetun's mouth as her head snapped back against the bedroom wall. Her husband's hand was still raised, fingers curled into a fist, chest heaving with exertion. His eyes were cold, detached, almost mechanical. This wasn't rage. This was routine. I told you to have my food ready by 8 p.m., Segun said, his voice eerily calm now. He wiped his knuckles on his trousers, straightening his shirt as if he'd just finished a workout. It's 8:15. Do you think I'm joking with you? Yetund pressed her palm against the wall to steady herself, her vision swimming. The food had been ready. She'd set it on the dining table at 7:45 p.m., covered carefully, still warm. He knew this. He'd walked past it twice. But Monday nights were never about the food. They were never about anything she did or didn't do. It took her 3 years to understand that. 3 years of apologies she didn't owe. 3 years of walking on eggshells, measuring her words, controlling her tone, cooking his favorite meals, pressing his clothes with military precision. 3 years of believing that if she just tried harder, loved better, submitted more, the violence would stop. But it never stopped. It only became more predictable. Every single Monday. I'm sorry, she whispered, the words automatic now, drained of meaning. Her left eye was already swelling shut. She could feel the heat spreading across her cheekbone, the bruise forming beneath her skin like storm clouds. Segun walked to the wardrobe and pulled out a fresh shirt, white, long-sleeved, expensive. He changed quickly, splashed cologne on his neck, and checked his reflection in the mirror. Satisfied, he turned back to her with a look that made her stomach turn. Not anger, not guilt. Satisfaction. I'll be back late, he said, grabbing his car keys from the dresser. Clean yourself up, you look pathetic. The door slammed behind him, and Yetund crumpled to the floor, her body shaking uncontrollably. But this time, the tears didn't come. Instead, something else surfaced, something sharp and cold that had been building for weeks. Clarity. She dragged herself to the bathroom and stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror above the sink. Her left eye was nearly swollen shut, a deep purple bruise spreading across her cheek. Her bottom lip was split, blood dried at the corner of her mouth. Her neck bore faint red marks where his hand had squeezed just minutes before. This was the face of a woman who had been apologizing for existing. But tonight, something was different. Yetund's phone buzzed on the bathroom counter, a notification lighting up the screen. She picked it up absently, expecting a message from her mother or maybe her younger sister, Funk, checking in as she often did. Instead, she saw Segun's name. Her heart hammered in her chest as she unlocked the phone. It was a message thread, one she wasn't supposed to see. His phone must have synced to the iPad they shared, the one he'd forgotten she still had access to. The conversation was with someone saved as O. Oh, did you handle it? Segun, yes, just finished. Oh, good. I need you focused when you come over, no distractions. Segun, you know I always deliver. Oh, I know you do, baby. That's why I love Mondays. Smirking face. Yetund's hands trembled so violently she nearly dropped the phone. She scrolled up, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The messages went back months. Oh, you need to put her in her place tonight. She's been too comfortable lately. Segun, don't worry. I'll make sure she remembers her position. Oh, send me proof after. I want to know you did it. Segun, Photo of Yetund crying on the bedroom floor, her face bruised. Oh, perfect. Now come to me. Yetund's vision blurred, but not from tears, from something far more dangerous. Rage. He had been documenting her pain, sharing it, performing cruelty like a circus act for someone else's entertainment. The Monday night beatings weren't about anger. They weren't about discipline or control or even power. They were foreplay. For him, for her. Yetund scrolled further, her stomach churning with every word. Oh, I love that you prove yourself to me every week. It shows me you're serious. Segun, anything for you. Oh, she probably thinks she's special, face with tears of joy. Segun, she's nothing. Just someone I'm stuck with until I figure out the next step. Oh, you mean until we figure out the next step. Don't forget who's funding your lifestyle, darling. Yetund's entire body went numb. The woman, this O, wasn't just his mistress. She was his sponsor, his financier, his puppeteer. And Yetund had been the punchline to their sick joke for 3 years. She sat on the cold bathroom floor, her back against the wall, staring at the phone in her hands. The messages kept coming, an endless scroll of calculated cruelty. Oh, make sure she doesn't leave. Broken women are easier to control. Segun, she won't leave. She has nowhere to go. Oh, good. I need her exactly where she is. Why? Yetund's mind raced. Why would a mistress want the wife to stay? And then it hit her like a slap. Because Yetund's suffering was part of the thrill. Because Amatola, she now knew the name from another message, enjoyed knowing that Segun came to her bed after bruising his wife, that he chose her after breaking someone else, that she had the power to command violence with a single text message. Yetund's hand stopped shaking. Her breathing steadied. And for the first time in 3 years, she didn't feel afraid. She felt something far more dangerous. She felt awake. She looked down at the phone one more time, scrolling to the most recent message. Oh, same time next Monday. Segun, always. Yetund smiled, a slow, bitter smile that didn't reach her eyes. No, she whispered to the empty bathroom. Not next Monday, not ever again. She stood up slowly, her body aching but her mind razor-sharp. She wiped the blood from her lip, cleaned her face carefully, and walked back into the bedroom. The food was still on the table, untouched and cold. She sat down in the dim light of the living room, her phone in her lap, and began scrolling through the messages again, not with despair this time, but with purpose. She screenshotted everything. Every message, every photo, every cruel word. She backed them up to a cloud account Segun didn't know existed. And then she sat in the darkness, waiting for the plan to form. Because Monday nights were never accidents. But neither would her escape be. What would you do if you discovered your pain was someone else's entertainment? Have you ever felt trapped in a marriage that was breaking you? Hit that like button if this story is hitting too close to home, and drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. You are not alone. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for Voice of Auntie Dora. What do you think Yetund should do next? Should she confront him, leave quietly, or plan something bigger? Comment below. Yetund now knows the truth, but what she doesn't know yet is that Amatola has been watching her too, and the mistress has plans of her own. Yetund didn't sleep that night. She sat in the darkness of their living room, her phone clutched in her hand, scrolling through years of messages that painted a portrait of calculated evil she had been too blind, or too hopeful, to see. But as dawn broke over Surler, casting pale orange light through the thin curtains, her mind traveled back to a different time. A time when Segun's hands had held her gently, when his voice had been soft, when she had believed she was building a life with a man who loved her. She had been so wrong. 5 years ago, Yetund had been a different woman. She'd been a primary school teacher at a small private school in Yaba, earning modest pay but loving every moment of it. The children adored her. Parents requested her specifically for their kids. Her principal had even hinted at a promotion to head teacher within 2 years. She'd had dreams then, Simple ones, maybe, but they'd been hers. She'd wanted to open her own educational center someday, a place where children from low-income families could get quality tutoring for free. She'd been saving diligently, putting away small amounts each month into a fixed deposit account her mother had helped her open. And then she'd met Segun at her cousin's wedding. He'd been charming that day, impossibly charming. Tall, well-dressed in a navy blue agbada that fit him perfectly, with a smile that made her feel like she was the only woman in the room. He'd approached her during the reception, introducing himself as a financial consultant working with a firm in Victoria Island. "You have a beautiful smile," he'd said, handing her a glass of Chapman. "I've been trying to get your attention all evening." She'd blushed, unused to such direct attention. Most men her age were either intimidated by educated women or only interested in quick flings. But Segun had seemed different. He'd asked about her work, listened intently when she talked about her students, and even shared his own dreams of building wealth to support his future family. "I want to give my wife and children everything," he'd said, his eyes earnest. "A comfortable home, good education, security. I'm working hard now so that when the time comes, I'll be ready." Those words had planted a seed. For 6 months, Segun had courted her with the patience of a man who knew exactly what he wanted. He'd sent her thoughtful text messages every morning. He'd shown up at her school with lunch on her busiest days. He'd met her parents 3 times before even discussing marriage, impressing her father with his seriousness and her mother with his respect for tradition. "This one is different," her mother had said, smiling as she braided Yetun's hair one Saturday afternoon. "He's not like these Lagos boys who just want to play. He has vision." Even Funk, her younger sister who was notoriously skeptical of men, had approved. "I like him," Funk had admitted reluctantly. "He actually listens when you talk, and he doesn't look at other women when you're standing right there. That's rare." So when Segun had knelt before her family with a bottle of schnapps and a list of bride price items, Yetund had said yes without hesitation. She'd believed she was choosing a partner, a future, a love story. She'd been choosing her executioner. The first year of marriage had been manageable. Not perfect, no marriage was, but manageable. They'd moved into the 2-bedroom flat in Surrey, a compromise between what they could afford and what felt comfortable. Yetund had continued teaching, contributing her salary to their household expenses, while Segun promised that his big break was coming. "Just be patient with me," he'd say whenever money got tight. "I'm building something, you'll see." And she'd believed him. She'd packed his lunch every morning, ironed his shirts until they were crisp, supported him through 3 job changes, and never complained when he came home late from networking events. But somewhere during the 2nd year, things began to shift. Segun became critical. Her cooking wasn't seasoned properly. Her clothes were too plain. Her conversation was boring. She wasn't trying hard enough to be the kind of wife a successful man needs. "You're a teacher," he'd said one evening, his tone dripping with disdain. "You spend your day with children. Can't you engage with adult topics when I come home?" Yetund had tried. She'd started reading newspapers, watching business channels, joining conversations about politics and economics even when she felt out of her depth. It was never enough. Then came the first time he raised his hand. It had been a Saturday morning. She'd been washing dishes when he'd asked her where his black shoes were. She'd told him they were in the shoe rack by the door, where they always were. "Are you calling me stupid?" he'd snapped. "No, I'm just..." The slap had come so fast she hadn't seen it coming. Her cheek had burned, her ear ringing from the impact. Segun had stared at his own hand, as if surprised by what it had done. Then his face had crumpled. "I'm so sorry," he'd whispered, pulling her into his arms even as she flinched. "I don't know what came over me. Work has been so stressful. I didn't mean it, baby. I swear I didn't mean it." He'd cried, actually cried, and she'd found herself comforting him, telling him it was okay, that she understood, that everyone made mistakes. That first apology had felt sincere. The second one, 3 weeks later, had felt slightly less convincing. By the 10th time, he'd stopped apologizing altogether. The Monday night pattern had started in the 3rd year of their marriage. At first, Yetund hadn't noticed the consistency. Violence had simply become part of her life, random explosions she'd learned to navigate like landmines. But then Funk had pointed it out during one of her visits. "Why is your face always bruised on Tuesdays?" her sister had asked, her eyes sharp with suspicion. Yetund had laughed it off. "I'm just clumsy, you know me." But Funk hadn't laughed back. "Yetund, I'm not stupid. Does he hit you?" "No, it's not like that. He's just stressed, work pressure, you know how it is." Funk had grabbed her hands, her voice urgent. "Listen to me. If he's hurting you, you need to leave. Come stay with me. We'll figure it out." But Yetund had refused, because leaving felt like failure, because her parents had sacrificed so much for her wedding, because the pastor at their church preached that good wives endured suffering with grace, because she'd still believed, desperately, foolishly, that love could fix broken men. So she'd stayed. And Segun had gotten worse. The violence became ritualistic. Every Monday night, like clockwork. It didn't matter if she'd had a good day or a bad day, if the house was spotless or messy, if dinner was perfect or burned. Monday nights belonged to his fists. And now she knew why. Yetund stood up from the couch, her joints stiff from sitting in the same position for hours. The morning sun was fully up now, and she could hear the sounds of Surulur waking up, vendors setting up their stalls, Okada riders revving their engines, neighbors shouting greetings across compound walls. Normal life, everyday life. While she stood in the wreckage of her own. She walked to the bedroom and opened the wardrobe, pulling out a small, locked box she kept hidden beneath her old teaching materials. Inside was her original savings account passbook, the one she'd opened before marriage. The one Segun didn't know about because he'd insisted they open a joint account for transparency. She'd been transferring small amounts back into her private account for the past year. Just 5,000 naira here, 10,000 there. Money she'd claimed was for church offerings or groceries or her mother's medication. It wasn't much, maybe 300,000 naira total. But it was hers, and it was a start. Her phone buzzed, a message from Segun. "I'll be home by 2 p.m. Make sure the house is clean and my food is ready. And cover that eye properly. I don't want the neighbors talking." No apology, no acknowledgement of what he'd done just hours ago. Just instructions. Yetund stared at the message for a long moment. Then she opened the photo gallery on her phone and looked at the screenshots she'd taken. Hundreds of messages between Segun and Amatola, documenting months of coordinated cruelty. She clicked on one message in particular. "Amatola, make sure she doesn't leave. Broken women are easier to control." A bitter laugh escaped Yetund's throat. They thought she was broken. They thought she was trapped. They thought they'd destroyed her so completely that she'd never fight back. They were wrong. Yetund opened her laptop, an old device she'd bought with her teaching salary, and created a new folder. She labeled it Evidence. She transferred every screenshot, every photo, every degrading message. Then she opened a fresh document and began typing. Timeline of abuse, a record. She started from the beginning, the first slap, the first Monday night beating, every injury she could remember, every threat he'd made, every time he'd isolated her from her family or prevented her from working. She documented it all with clinical precision, her fingers flying across the keyboard. When she finished, it was 23 pages long. 23 pages of hell that she'd survived. 23 pages, that would become her weapon. She saved the document in 3 different locations. Her laptop, a USB drive she buried in a bag of rice in the kitchen, and a cloud storage account she created using an email address Segun didn't know existed. Then she made a phone call. "Hello," Funk's voice was thick with sleep. "Yetund, it's 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Yetund said calmly. "I just need to ask you something." "Okay. Do you still have that friend, the one who's a lawyer? the one who handles family law cases. There was a long pause. Yes, Funk said slowly. Why? I need her number. Yetund. I'm not ready to talk about it yet, but I need the number. Another pause, then, I'll send it now. Thank you. Yetund, Funk's voice cracked slightly. Are you safe? Yetund looked around the flat she'd cleaned and maintained and filled with effort for a man who'd repaid her with violence. The flat that had become her prison. Not yet, she said quietly, but I will be. She hung up before her sister could ask more questions. The lawyer's number came through seconds later. Yetund saved it under a fake name, Dr. Blessing. Then she went to the kitchen and began preparing Segun's lunch. Jollof rice, fried plantain, grilled chicken. She cooked with the same care she always had, her movements automatic, efficient. But this time, her mind was elsewhere. This time, she was planning. Because broken women didn't keep records. Broken women didn't gather evidence. Broken women didn't strategize. And Yetund was no longer broken. She was something far more dangerous. She was a woman who'd finally stopped apologizing for surviving. When Segun came home at 2 p.m., the house was spotless. His food was on the table, still warm. Yetund was sitting in the living room, her swollen eye carefully covered with makeup, her expression neutral. Good, he said, barely glancing at her as he sat down to eat. At least you can follow simple instructions. Yetund didn't respond. She simply watched him eat, her face blank. But inside, behind the carefully constructed mask of submission, something had shifted. A switch had been flipped, and there was no turning it off. Segun finished his meal, belched loudly, and headed to the bedroom for his afternoon nap. Yetund waited until she heard his snores rumbling through the thin walls. Then she picked up her phone and sent a message to the number Funk had given her. Hello, my name is Yetund. I need legal advice about leaving an abusive marriage. I have evidence. Can we meet this week? The response came within minutes. Yes, let's talk, you're not alone. Yetund's hands trembled as she typed back, thank you. She deleted the message thread immediately after. Then she sat back on the couch, her heart pounding but her mind clear. Monday nights were never accidents. But neither was her awakening. Yetund has started gathering her weapons, but she doesn't know that Amatola has been watching her social media, tracking her movements, and planning something that will force Yetund to make a choice she never saw coming. The meeting with the lawyer happened on a Thursday afternoon. Yetund had told Segun she was going to the market. Instead, she'd taken a bus to Aikja, to a small law office tucked above a pharmacy on Awolowo Road. The lawyer's name was Barrister Ngozi Okafor, a sharp-eyed woman in her early 40s who listened without interrupting as Yetund showed her everything. The screenshots, the timeline, the photos of her injuries she'd been secretly documenting for weeks. When Yetund finished, Ngozi had leaned back in her chair and exhaled slowly. This is one of the most organized cases of domestic abuse documentation I've ever seen, she'd said. Most women come to me with nothing but their word. You've come with a prosecution file. So I can leave, Yetund had asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Legally, he can't force me back. Not only can you leave, Ngozi had said, but with this evidence, you can file for divorce on grounds of cruelty. You can also pursue criminal charges for assault. And this, she'd tapped the screenshots of Amatola's messages. This proves premeditation and conspiracy. Both of them could face serious consequences. Yetund had felt something loosen in her chest, something that had been coiled tight for 3 years. Hope. But Ngozi's next words had been sobering. However, you need to understand something. The moment you leave, he will try to control the narrative. He'll tell everyone you're mentally unstable, that you abandoned your marriage, that you're the problem. Men like him always do. And if this Amatola woman has money and influence like you say, they'll come after your reputation. So what do I do? You leave quietly. You don't announce it. You don't confront him. You don't give him a chance to manipulate or threaten you into staying. You pack what matters, you go somewhere safe, and then we handle everything legally from a distance. Can you do that?" Yetund had nodded, even though her hands were shaking. "I can do that." That had been 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks of planning in silence. 2 weeks of enduring Monday night beatings while secretly transferring her important documents, her certificates, her passport, her birth certificate, to Funk's apartment in small batches. 2 weeks of playing the role of the broken, obedient wife, while methodically dismantling her life, with Segun piece by piece. She'd taken photos of everything in the apartment, their furniture, their appliances, the receipts for items she'd purchased with her own teaching salary before Segun had forced her to quit. Evidence of her financial contribution to their household. She'd made copies of his bank statements from the joint account, showing large transfers to Amatola that he'd tried to hide by labeling them as business investments. She'd even recorded 2 of their arguments on her phone, capturing his verbal abuse and threats in his own voice. Barrister Ngozi had been right. She wasn't just leaving. She was building a case. But more than that, she was reclaiming herself. The night she chose to leave wasn't a Monday. It was a Friday, a day Segun always went out with his colleagues for boys' night, usually returning around 2 a.m., drunk and aggressive. But this Friday was different. Amatola had texted him earlier in the day. Yetund had seen the message pop up on the synced iPad. "Amatola, come over tonight. I have a surprise for you. And bring that bottle of Hennessy you've been saving. We're celebrating." Segun, celebrating what? "Amatola, you'll see. Smirking face, just make sure you're here by 9 p.m. and don't rush back to that wife of yours. She can wait." Yetund had read those messages 3 times, her jaw clenched. They were so comfortable, so careless, so confident that she would never discover the truth, never fight back, never leave. That confidence would be their mistake. At 7 p.m., Segun came out of the bedroom dressed in designer jeans and a fitted shirt Yetund had never seen before. He smelled of expensive cologne. "I'm going out," he announced, not even looking at her. "Don't wait up." "Okay," Yetund said softly, her eyes downcast in the submissive posture he expected. He grabbed his car keys and walked out, slamming the door behind him. Yetund waited exactly 5 minutes. Then she moved. She'd already packed 2 days ago, a single backpack hidden in the bottom of the wardrobe, containing her documents, her savings passbook, 2 changes of clothes, her laptop, and the USB drive with all her evidence. Everything else, the furniture, the kitchen appliances, the wedding photos, she left behind. He'd never valued her contributions anyway. He could keep the things. She was taking what mattered. Her freedom, her voice, her future. She changed quickly into jeans and a simple blouse, tied her hair back, and slipped on her sneakers. Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She looked at herself in the mirror, really looked. The woman staring back at her was 31 years old but looked older, worn down by years of fear and violence. Her eyes were tired, her shoulders hunched, her expression defeated. But beneath that exhaustion, Yetund could see something else. Strength that had been buried but never destroyed. Rage that had been silenced but never extinguished. A woman who was about to disappear, but only so she could return as someone they'd never see coming. She picked up her backpack, took one last look around the flat, and walked out. She didn't leave a note. She didn't take anything that would make him immediately suspicious. She simply left, locking the door behind her as if she were just stepping out to buy bread. The street was busy with evening activity, people returning from work, children playing football in the narrow road, women frying akara at the corner. Nobody paid attention to one more woman walking down the street with a backpack. Yetund flagged down an Okada and gave the driver Funk's address in Jibegata. As the motorcycle wove through Lagos traffic, the city lights blurring past her, Yetund felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Lightness. As if she'd been carrying a weight so heavy she'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe properly. Funk opened the door before Yetund could even knock. I saw you from the window, her sister said, pulling her inside quickly and locking the door. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? Did he follow you? I'm fine, Yetund said, and for the first time in years it wasn't a lie. He doesn't even know I'm gone yet. Funk pulled her into a tight hug. And Yetund finally allowed herself to cry, not from pain this time, but from relief. You're safe now, Funk whispered. You're safe. Segun didn't call until 11 p.m. Yetund's phone buzzed on Funk's coffee table, his name flashing on the screen. Don't answer it, Funk said immediately. But Yetund picked up the phone anyway and listened as it rang. She didn't answer. She just wanted to hear how many times he'd call before he realized something was wrong. He called 6 times in a row. Then the messages started. Where are you? Yetund, answer your phone now. I'm home. Where the hell are you? If you're playing games with me, you'll regret it. Answer Emmy. Yetund watched the messages appear one after another, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. Let him panic, let him search, let him wonder. Let him feel, for once, what it was like to lose control. Around midnight, her phone rang again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. She answered. Hello. Is this Mrs. Yetund? A woman's voice. Smooth, confident, dripping with false concern. Amatola. Who's asking? Yetund said calmly. This is a friend of your husband's. He's very worried about you. He said you left without telling him where you were going. He asked me to call in case something happened to your phone. Yetund almost laughed. So Amatola wanted to play the concerned friend. Tell Segun I'm fine, Yetund said, her voice steady. And tell him I'll be in touch when I'm ready. Wait, Mrs. Yetund, I really think you should come home. Marriage is difficult, I know, but running away isn't the answer. Think about your reputation. Think about what people will say. Now Yetund did laugh, a bitter, sharp sound. You're absolutely right, she said sweetly. I should think about what people will say. Maybe I'll start by thinking about what they'll say when they see the messages you've been sending my husband. The ones where you told him to beat me every Monday night. The ones where you called me pathetic. The ones with photos of my bruises that you asked him to send you. Silence on the other end. I don't know what you're talking about, Amatola said finally, her voice tight. Of course you don't, Yetund said, but you will soon. She hung up. Funk was staring at her, eyes wide. Yetund, who is that? The woman who's been enjoying my suffering, Yetund said calmly. The woman who thought I was too stupid to fight back. She turned off her phone completely and looked at her sister. Funk, I need you to do me a favor. Anything. I need to disappear for a while, not forever, just long enough for them to think I've given up, long enough for them to get comfortable again. Can I stay here? Of course, stay as long as you need. Thank you. Yetund sat down on the couch and exhaled slowly. Phase 1 was complete. She'd escaped. Now came the hard part. Rebuilding. Becoming strong enough that when she finally faced them again, they wouldn't recognize the woman standing before them. Because she wasn't leaving forever. She was leaving to prepare. And when she returned, and she would return, she would be untouchable. 2 days later, Segun filed a missing person report with the police, claiming his wife had disappeared suddenly and might be mentally unstable. Barrister Ngozi called Yetund immediately. They're trying to paint you as unhinged, she said. Are you ready to respond? Not yet, Yetund said. Let them think they're winning, let them relax. You're sure? I'm sure. Because Yetund had learned something important over 3 years of surviving Segun's violence. The best time to strike wasn't when your enemy was alert and defensive. It was when they thought they'd already won. While Yetund rebuilds in silence, Amatola makes a move that will change everything. She applies for a job at the same company where Yetund used to work before Segun forced her to quit. She's not just taking Segun. She wants to erase Yetund completely. But what she doesn't know is that Yetund's former principal has been looking for her. And she's about to make an offer that will put Yetund in a position neither Segun nor Amatola ever imagined. 3 months after Yetund left, something unexpected happened. Mrs. Alidal, her former principal from the private school in Yaba, showed up at Funk's apartment unannounced on a Saturday morning. "I've been looking for you everywhere," Mrs. Alidal said when Funk opened the door, her face a mixture of concern and determination. "Your husband said you'd had a nervous breakdown and were recuperating somewhere private, but I didn't believe him." Yetund appeared in the doorway behind her sister, and Mrs. Alidal's expression shifted immediately, from concern to anger. "What did he do to you?" the older woman asked quietly, taking in Yetund's appearance. She'd gained a little weight back, her face had color again, but there was something in her eyes that told a story of survival. "It's a long story," Yetund said. "Then you'd better make us some tea," Mrs. Alidal said, walking inside. "Because I have a proposition for you, and you're going to want to hear it." An hour later, Yetund sat stunned at Funk's dining table. "You want me to come back," she said slowly, "as head teacher." "Not just head teacher," Mrs. Alidal corrected. "I'm retiring next year. I want you to take over as principal. I've already spoken to the board. They remember you, Yetund. They remember how dedicated you were, how much the children loved you, how the parents requested you specifically. When you left, it felt like the heart went out of the school. But I've been gone for 2 years. And you're one of the best educators I've ever worked with," Mrs. Alidal interrupted firmly. "Whatever that man told you about yourself, whatever he made you believe, it was all lies. You are brilliant, Yetund, and I refuse to let your talent go to waste because some small man needed to feel big." Yetund felt tears prick her eyes. She'd forgotten what it felt like to be valued, to be seen as capable, to be wanted for her skills rather than her submission. "The salary isn't huge," Mrs. Alidal continued, "but it's steady. 180,000 naira a month to start, with housing allowance and medical benefits. And once you take over as principal, it goes up to 280,000. You'd be independent, Yetund, completely independent." Independent. The word tasted like freedom. "When would I start?" Yetund heard herself ask. Mrs. Alidal smiled. "Monday." Yetund started back at the school quietly, without fanfare. She told no one except Funk and Barrister Ngozi. She didn't update her social media. She didn't make announcements. She simply showed up on Monday morning, walked into her new office, and began rebuilding her life one day at a time. The children remembered her. They ran to her during break time, hugging her legs, asking where she'd been, telling her they'd missed her. "Miss Yetund is back," they shouted, their voices carrying across the playground. And for the first time in years, Yetund felt something she'd thought was dead. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. But Yetund wasn't naive. She knew that eventually Segun would find out where she was. She knew that he and Amatola would try something, so she prepared. She'd been meeting with Barrister Ngozi weekly, building her legal case piece by piece. The divorce papers were ready. The criminal complaint for assault was documented. The evidence was organized in multiple locations. But Yetund wasn't ready to file yet. Because revenge, she'd learned, wasn't just about legal victories. It was about reclaiming the life that had been stolen from her. It was about becoming so strong, so successful, so visibly thriving that her very existence became a daily reminder to Segun and Amatola of what they'd tried and failed to destroy. Revenge didn't always scream. Sometimes it rebuilt, quietly, strategically, powerfully. Have you ever had to rebuild yourself after someone tried to break you? Have you ever walked away from a situation and came back stronger than they ever expected? Drop a like if Yetund's journey is inspiring you, and comment below. We want to hear your story. Your strength matters. 6 weeks into her new position, Yetund attended an education conference at the Eco Hotel in Victoria Island. It was a professional development event for school administrators across Lagos, and Mrs. Alidal had insisted she attend. "You need to network," the older woman had said. "You're going to be a principal soon. Start acting like one." Yetund had worn a navy blue dress that Funk had bought for her, simple but elegant, with a confidence she was slowly learning to inhabit again. She'd styled her hair in neat braids, minimal makeup, professional heels. She looked like an educator, a leader, a woman who belonged in rooms that made decisions. She looked nothing like the broken woman who'd fled her marriage 4 months ago. The conference was crowded with educators, policymakers, and school owners. Yetund had just collected her name tag and conference materials when she heard a voice behind her. Yetund. She turned. Standing there was Dame Alola Martins, an old colleague from her university days. He'd been in the education faculty with her, and they'd maintained a friendly professional relationship even after graduation. He was now the director of a successful chain of international schools across Lagos. Dame Alola, she said, genuinely pleased. It's been so long. Too long, he agreed, smiling warmly. I heard you'd left teaching, something about your husband's business needing you. Yetund's smile tightened slightly, but she kept her voice even. That didn't work out, but I'm back now, head teacher at Bright Future Academy in Yaba. Head teacher, Dame Alola's eyebrows rose. Yetund, you should be running your own school by now. You were the best in our class. Maybe someday, she said modestly. I'm serious, he said. Actually, I've been looking for someone to manage our new campus in Lekki. It's a big project, 500 students, state-of-the-art facilities, international curriculum. I need someone with vision and experience. Someone parents will trust. He paused. Someone like you. Yetund stared at him. Dame Alola, I've only been back in teaching for 6 weeks. And in those 6 weeks, how many parents have already enrolled their children specifically because you're there? She thought about it. At least 15 families had transferred from other schools once word spread that Miss Yetund was back. That's what I thought, Dame Alola said. Look, I'm not asking you to decide now, but think about it. The salary is 450,000 naira monthly, plus performance bonuses. The school opens in January. We can talk more if you're interested. He handed her his business card. Yetund took it, her mind racing. 450,000 naira, more than double what she'd ever earned, enough to be completely independent, enough to never need anyone's permission to exist, enough to build the life she'd always wanted. I'll think about it, she said. Please do, Dame Alola said. Education needs people like you, Yetund. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Yetund attended 3 more panels that day, took notes, collected contacts, and networked with confidence she'd been practicing for weeks. By the time the conference ended, her phone was full of new numbers and her mind was full of possibilities. She was walking toward the hotel exit when she froze. Across the lobby, standing near the elevators, was Amatola. She was dressed in an expensive cream-colored pantsuit, her hair in long Brazilian weave, her makeup flawless. She was laughing with 2 other women, her whole demeanor radiating wealth and confidence. Yetund's first instinct was to turn around, to hide, to avoid confrontation. But then something shifted inside her. Why should she hide? She wasn't the one who should be ashamed. She wasn't the one who'd orchestrated abuse. She wasn't the one living a lie. So instead of turning away, Yetund walked straight toward the exit, which meant walking directly past Amatola. As she approached, Amatola glanced up casually, then did a double take. Their eyes met. For 3 long seconds, they stared at each other. Amatola's expression cycled through shock, confusion, and then something that looked almost like fear. Because the woman standing before her wasn't the broken, desperate wife she'd mocked in those text messages. This woman was dressed professionally, standing tall, looking healthy and confident. This woman looked like she was thriving. Yetund didn't say a word. She simply smiled, a small, knowing smile, and kept walking. Behind her, she heard Amatola excuse herself from her companions and hurry after her. Yetund, wait. Yetund stopped at the hotel entrance and turned calmly. Amatola approached, her heels clicking on the marble floor, her face a mask of false concern. Yetund, I'm so glad to see you're okay. Amatola said, her voice dripping with fake warmth. Segun has been so worried about you. We all have. Where have you been? We, Yetund said pleasantly. I didn't realize you and my husband were close enough to worry about me together. Amatola's smile flickered. Well, you know, as his business associate, I naturally. Business associate, Yetund repeated, her tone conversational. Is that what we're calling it now? The mask slipped slightly. Amatola's eyes hardened. I don't know what you think you know. I know everything, Yetund said quietly. Every message, every photo, every Monday night instruction, every cruel word. I have it all, Amatola, backed up in multiple locations. The color drained from Amatola's face. You're lying. Am I? Yetund tilted her head. Tell me, does Segun know you kept all those messages? Does he know you documented everything? Because I'm guessing he'd be very interested to learn that his business associate has been collecting evidence of conspiracy to commit assault. Amatola's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I could ruin you, she finally hissed, her voice low and venomous. Do you know who I am? Do you know what I'm capable of? Yes, Yetund said calmly. You're capable of manipulating weak men into hurting their wives for your entertainment. You're capable of funding cruelty because it makes you feel powerful. You're capable of everything except one thing. What's that? Winning, Yetund said. Because while you were busy playing games, I was gathering weapons. And now I'm rebuilding my life in ways you can't touch, can't buy, and can't destroy. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. You thought I was broken. You thought I'd disappear and never come back. You were wrong. She turned and walked away, leaving Amatola standing frozen in the hotel lobby. And as Yetund stepped out into the Lagos evening, the city lights reflecting off the buildings around her, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Power. Not the kind that came from control or cruelty. The kind that came from surviving, from rebuilding, from refusing to stay down. That night, Amatola called Segun 17 times. Yetund knew this because Segun's panicked messages started appearing on the iPad around 11 p.m. Amatola, she knows everything, everything. She has the messages, she has the photos. How could you be so careless? Segun, what are you talking about? What messages? Amatola, the ones I sent you, the ones about the Monday nights. She says she has proof of everything. Segun, that's impossible. I deleted everything. Amatola, well, obviously you didn't delete everything because she just threatened me at the Eco Hotel conference. Segun, she was at a conference. What conference? Amatola, an education conference. She looked different. She looked confident, like she's been planning this. Segun, planning what? Amatola, revenge, you idiot. She's not broken anymore. She's not hiding. She's out there building a life, and she has evidence that could destroy both of us. There was a long pause in the messages. Then, Segun, we need to get ahead of this. We need to control the story before she does. Amatola, how? Segun, I'll file for divorce first. I'll say she abandoned the marriage. I'll say she's been mentally unstable. I'll paint her as the villain before she can paint us. Amatola, will that work? Segun, it has to. Yetund read the messages with a cold smile. Let them scramble. Let them panic. Let them make desperate moves that would only give her more ammunition. Because they were still underestimating her. They still thought this was about legal battles and public narratives. They didn't understand that Yetund's revenge wasn't about destroying them in court. It was about becoming so successful, so visible, so undeniably thriving that every time they saw her name, attended an event she was at, or heard people praise her work, they would be forced to confront what they'd tried and failed to break. The best revenge wasn't hurting them. It was becoming untouchable. Segun files for divorce, claiming Yetund abandoned him and is mentally unstable. But when the divorce papers are served to Barrister Ngozi's office, they contain one detail Segun doesn't know Yetund has evidence to disprove, and it's the mistake that will cost him everything. Meanwhile, Amatola discovers something about Segun that makes her realize she was never his partner. She was always his victim too. And now she has to make a choice: protect Segun or save herself. What would you do if you discovered your abuser was more afraid of you than you ever were of them? Has anyone ever underestimated your strength? Hit that like button if you're rooting for Yetund, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Drop a comment telling us, do you think Amatola will turn on Segun? We're reading every single one. The divorce papers arrived at Barrister Ngozi's office on a Wednesday morning, delivered by a process server who looked bored with his job. Yetund sat across from Ngozi's desk as the lawyer flipped through the documents, her expression shifting from neutral to amused to absolutely delighted. "He's an idiot," Ngozi said finally, looking up with a grin. "An absolute idiot." "What do you mean?" Yetund asked. "Look at this." Ngozi turned the papers around, pointing to a specific paragraph. "He's claiming you abandoned the marriage on October 15th without cause or explanation. He's saying you left behind all your personal belongings, proving you were mentally unstable and acting irrationally. And October 15th is the date you left, but look at what else he included." She flipped to another page. "He's attached bank statements showing that he was the sole provider for the household, that you contributed nothing financially, and that you were completely dependent on him." Yetund's jaw tightened. Even now, even after everything, Segun was trying to erase her contributions. "But here's the beautiful part," Ngozi continued, her smile widening. "These bank statements show a large withdrawal on October 14th, the day before you left. 500,000 naira transferred to an account belonging to O. Badmus. Want to guess who that is?" "Amatola," Yetund whispered. "Exactly. And according to his own filing, he claims he was home alone on October 15th, worried sick about his missing wife. But his phone records, which he stupidly attached to prove he was trying to find you, show he was in Lekki that entire night, at an address that, when I looked it up, belongs to one Amatola Badmus." Yetund stared at the documents, pieces clicking into place. He's lying about his whereabouts. He's lying about the financial situation. And he's incriminated himself by trying to hide the money trail to his mistress. Ngozi leaned back in her chair. "Yetund, he just handed us everything we need. All we have to do is respond." "Then let's respond," Yetund said quietly. "Are you sure? Once we file our counterpetition with all your evidence, the abuse documentation, the messages, the photos, this becomes public record. Everyone will know what he did, what they both did." Yetund thought about the woman she'd been 4 months ago, scared, broken, apologizing for existing. Then she thought about the woman she was now, employed, independent, rebuilding. That woman didn't need protection from the truth. "File it," she said, "all of it." The counterpetition was filed 3 days later. 27 pages of documented abuse, screenshots of messages between Segun and Amatola, medical records from the 2 times Yetund had gone to the hospital after particularly brutal Monday night beatings, claiming she'd fallen down the stairs, financial records proving her contributions to the household before Segun had forced her to quit working, witness statements from neighbors who'd heard the screaming every Monday night but had been too afraid to intervene. And photos, dozens of photos Yetund had secretly taken of her injuries over 3 years. Black eyes, split lips, bruised arms, fingerprint marks on her throat. Evidence that couldn't be explained away or dismissed as marital disagreements. Within 48 hours, the story had leaked. Not through Yetund. She'd told no one except Funk and Mrs. Aladel. But court filings were semi-public documents, and someone had taken photos of the petition and posted them online. By Saturday morning, the screenshots were circulating on Lagos Twitter, Lagos Instagram, Lagos WhatsApp groups. Lagos businessman accused of ritualistic abuse. Wife provides evidence of scheduled Monday night beatings orchestrated with mistress. The court of public opinion moved faster than any legal system. Within hours, people were digging into Segun's background, his company, his social media, his connections. And they found Amatola. Her Instagram, once filled with luxury photos and cryptic captions about deserving the best, was flooded with comments. You told him to beat his wife. You're sick. How can a woman do this to another woman? You deserve everything that's coming to you. This is evil, pure evil. By Sunday afternoon, Amatola's Instagram account was deleted. By Monday morning, 3 companies had terminated business relationships with Segun's consulting firm. By Tuesday, Amatola's own business, a boutique event planning company, had lost 5 major clients who publicly stated they could not be associated with someone accused of conspiracy to commit domestic violence. The walls were closing in. And Yetund hadn't said a single word publicly. She'd simply told the truth and let it do what truth does. What would you do if your silence finally turned into your most powerful weapon? Have you ever watched karma work in real time? Drop a like if you believe the truth always comes out, and comment below. Do you think Segun and Amatola deserve what's happening to them? We want to hear from you. On Wednesday evening, Yetund's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Yetund. Amatola's voice was barely recognizable, hoarse, shaking, desperate. Please, we need to talk. We have nothing to talk about, Yetund said calmly. Please, I'm begging you. I'll tell you everything. I'll testify against him. I'll give you everything you need. Just, please stop this. Yetund paused. Stop what? This public destruction. My business is dying. My family won't speak to me. People recognize me on the street and call me names. I can't do this anymore. You should have thought about that before you turned my pain into your entertainment, Yetund said quietly. I know, Amatola's voice cracked. I know what I did was evil. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but you don't understand. What don't I understand? There was a long silence. Then, in a voice so small it was almost a whisper. He did it to me too. Yetund's breath caught. What? Segun, Amatola said, her words tumbling out now. In the beginning, he was so charming, so attentive. He made me feel special. But then he started asking me to prove my love, to prove my loyalty. Small things at first, lending him money, paying for dinners, covering his rent when he said his business was struggling. She took a shaky breath. Then the requests got stranger. He said if I really loved him, I'd understand that he needed to maintain control over his wife, that she was trying to leave him, trying to embarrass him, trying to destroy his reputation. He made you sound like you were the villain, and I believed him. So you told him to beat me. Yetund's voice was ice. No, I mean, yes, but not like that. He'd call me crying, saying you disrespected him in public, that you were trying to make him look weak. He'd ask what I thought he should do, and I'd say he needed to remind you who was in charge. I didn't think. You didn't think he'd actually do it, or you didn't care. Amatola was crying now. Both. I didn't think he'd go that far, and by the time I realized he was, I was in too deep. He had messages from me, photos I'd sent him, videos, things I'd done that my family could never know about. He said if I ever tried to leave, he'd destroy me. So you stayed, and you kept encouraging him to hurt me. I thought if I played along, if I kept him happy, he'd eventually choose me. He kept promising he'd leave you, that we'd be together, but he never did. He just kept using both of us. Yetund closed her eyes, a wave of something like pity washing over her. Not enough to forgive, never enough to forgive, but enough to understand. Amatola hadn't been Segun's partner. She'd been another victim, in a different kind of cage. What do you want from me? Yetund asked. Help me, Amatola whispered. Help me get away from him. I'll give you everything, all the messages, all the financial records, everything he made me hide for him. I'll testify. I'll tell the truth about everything. Just, please. Yetund was quiet for a long moment. Send everything to my lawyer, she said finally. Barrister Ngozi Okafor. Every message, every document, every piece of evidence you have. If it's useful, she'll contact you about testifying. Thank you. I'm not doing this for you, Yetund interrupted coldly. I'm doing this because the truth matters, because other women need to see what men like Segun are capable of, because your testimony might save the next woman he tries to destroy." She paused. "But don't ever contact me again. What you did to me, encouraging him, enjoying it, documenting it, that's something I'll never forgive. You're not my victim. You're my cautionary tale." Yetund hung up. For a long moment, she sat in Funk's living room, staring at her phone. Then she blocked Amatola's number and went back to preparing her lesson plans for the next day. Because that was the thing about revenge. Once you stopped letting them occupy your mental space, once you stopped caring what they thought or did or said, once you filled your life with purpose and joy and growth, they became irrelevant. And irrelevance was the cruelest punishment of all. 3 weeks later, Amatola's testimony was submitted to the court. She'd sent everything: messages, bank statements, photos, videos, evidence of financial manipulation, evidence that Segun had been running a sophisticated scheme of emotional abuse against multiple women, using each one's vulnerabilities against them. The case against Segun expanded from divorce proceedings to potential criminal charges. His business collapsed completely. His friends stopped returning his calls. His family, once proud of his success, publicly distanced themselves. And Yetund, the woman he'd spent 3 years trying to break, was offered the principal position at De Malola's new Lekki campus. She accepted. Are you seeing what we're seeing? When you focus on rebuilding yourself instead of destroying your enemies, life has a way of handling the justice for you. If Yetund's strength is inspiring you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This is the kind of story that reminds us why we never give up. Comment below. What's one thing you're doing today to rebuild your own life? 6 months after she'd left, Yetund attended the grand opening of Bright Horizons International School in Lekki. She stood at the entrance in a tailored emerald green dress, greeting parents and students, shaking hands with investors and education officials, smiling for photos that would appear in newspapers and magazines. She'd lost the haunted look in her eyes. Her shoulders were straight. Her voice was confident. She looked like what she was, a successful educator, a leader, a woman who'd survived hell and built heaven with her own hands. Halfway through the event, she saw him. Segun was standing across the street, partially hidden behind a parked car, watching her. He looked terrible, thinner, older, worn down by legal battles and public shame. Their eyes met. And Yetund felt nothing. Not anger, not fear, not even satisfaction. Just indifference. She turned away and went back to greeting parents, laughing with colleagues, discussing enrollment procedures with excited families. When she looked back 10 minutes later, he was gone. That night, back at her new apartment in Yaba, a small but comfortable one-bedroom she'd rented with her first month's principal salary, Yetund sat by the window and looked out at the Lagos skyline. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, broken, silent, apologizing for breathing. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the fear, the planning, the quiet escape, the slow rebuilding. And she thought about the women who were still where she'd been, still trapped, still believing they had no way out, still thinking that leaving meant weakness. She picked up her phone and opened a fresh document. She titled it, "To the Woman Who Thinks She Can't Leave." And she began to type. "I want to tell you something nobody told me when I needed to hear it. Your silence is not weakness. Your endurance is not strength. And staying is not love. I stayed for 3 years in a marriage that was killing me, slowly, methodically, every Monday night. I stayed because I thought leaving meant failure. I stayed because I was afraid of what people would say. I stayed because I believed that love could fix broken men. I was wrong. Love cannot fix what refuses to acknowledge it's broken. Love cannot heal what enjoys causing pain. Love cannot save what never valued you in the first place. When I finally left, I didn't leave because I was strong. I left because I was tired. Tired of apologizing for existing. Tired of measuring my words. Tired of surviving instead of living. And you know what I discovered. Leaving wasn't the hard part. Staying had been hard. Every single day of those 3 years was hard. Leaving was just one difficult night followed by one difficult week, followed by one difficult month. And then it got easier. And then I got stronger. And then I became someone neither of us recognized, someone who wasn't afraid anymore, someone who didn't need permission to exist, someone who understood that the best revenge wasn't hurting him. It was becoming untouchable. If you're reading this and you're afraid, I want you to know, you are not alone. You are not weak. You are not trapped forever. You are simply waiting for the moment when you get tired enough to choose yourself. And when that moment comes, and it will come, don't wait for perfect timing. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait until you have everything figured out. Just leave, quietly, safely, strategically. And then rebuild, one day at a time. Because the woman they tried to destroy, she's still here. And she's just getting started. Yetund read the words back, tears streaming down her face, but this time they were tears of relief, of pride, of hard-won peace. She posted the essay on her personal blog, a small website she'd created to document her journey. Within an hour, it had been shared 50 times. By the next morning, 500. By the end of the week, her inbox was flooded with messages from women all over Nigeria, all over Africa, all over the world. Thank you for telling your story. You gave me the courage to leave. I thought I was alone. I'm not alone. I'm still here too, and I'm just getting started. Yetund read every single message. And she understood, finally, what the last year had been about. Not revenge, not justice, not even healing. It was about transformation. About refusing to let cruelty have the last word. About becoming living proof that survival was possible, that rebuilding was possible, that joy after trauma was possible. That Monday nights could just be Monday nights again, nothing more, nothing less. On what would have been the anniversary of Yetund and Segun's wedding, Barrister Ngozi called with news. The divorce is finalized, she said. He dropped his counterclaims, you're free. What about the criminal case? Yetund asked. It's proceeding. Amatola's testimony combined with your evidence was enough. He'll face charges. It won't be a long sentence, our justice system being what it is, but there will be consequences. Good, Yetund said quietly. How are you feeling? Yetund looked around her apartment, at the lesson plans spread across her dining table, at the photo on her fridge of her and her students at the school's recent cultural day, at the certificate from last week's education leadership workshop hanging on her wall, at the life she'd built from ashes. I'm feeling free, she said. And she meant it. 3 months later, Yetund was featured in a Lagos newspapers, Women in Education Spotlight. The article talked about her innovative teaching methods, her vision for accessible quality education, her rapid rise from teacher to principal. There was no mention of Segun, no mention of the abuse, no mention of the darkness she'd survived. Because that wasn't her story anymore. Her story was what she'd built after. And that was the sweetest revenge of all. The last time Yetund saw Amatola, it was by accident. She was at a restaurant in Aiksha with Mrs. Aladel, celebrating the end of the school term, when Amatola walked in with a man Yetund didn't recognize. Amatola saw her immediately. Their eyes met across the restaurant. For a moment, neither moved. Then Amatola did something Yetund never expected. She nodded, just once. A small gesture of acknowledgement that might have been respect, might have been apology, might have been simply recognition of a shared history neither would ever forget. Yetund nodded back. And then they both went back to their separate lives. Because that was the thing about moving on. It didn't require reconciliation, or friendship, or forgiveness. It simply required accepting that some chapters were closed, some wounds would always scar, and some people would remain in your past where they belonged. Yetund had learned to carry her story without letting it carry her. And that made all the difference. 2 years after Yetund left, Bright Horizons International School in Lekki was recognized as one of the top 10 new schools in Lagos. Yetun's educational center for low-income children, the dream she'd had before she met Segun, finally opened its doors in Yaba, funded by a combination of her savings, a small business grant, and donations from parents who'd been inspired by her story. She never remarried, not because she was afraid of men or bitter about love, but because she'd learned something more important. She didn't need another person to complete her story. She was already whole. On Monday nights, she taught free tutoring sessions at her center. Those evenings were filled with children's laughter, patient explanations of mathematics, excited discussions of literature. Monday nights were no longer marked by fear. They were marked by purpose. And every time a woman reached out to Yetund, through her blog, through social media, through whispered conversations after church, asking how to leave, asking if it was possible to rebuild, asking if she'd survive, Yetund would tell them the truth. The best revenge is not hurting them. The best revenge is becoming untouchable. And then she'd help them take the first step toward freedom. Because she remembered what it felt like to be trapped, to be voiceless, to believe there was no way out. And she'd made it her mission to ensure that no woman who came after her would ever feel that alone. Segun eventually disappeared from public life. His business failed. His reputation was ruined. The last Yetund heard, he'd moved to another state, trying to start over with a new name and a new story. She didn't care enough to confirm it. Because the woman they'd thought was weak. She'd become someone they could never touch, never hurt, never diminish. She'd become herself, fully, freely, powerfully. And that was the only ending that mattered. The end. To every woman reading this, your pain is real, but it doesn't define you. Your survival is not weakness, it's the beginning of your strength. And when you finally choose yourself, when you finally walk away, when you finally rebuild, you'll discover something beautiful. You were never the broken one. You were just trapped in someone else's brokenness. And now, you're free. Drop a like if this story touched you. Subscribe if you want more stories of strength and survival. And comment below to let other women know you're not alone. We're all here, we all survived, and we're just getting started. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Your voice could save a life. Thank you for watching. This is Voice of Auntie Dora reminding you that Monday nights are just Monday nights. Nothing more, nothing less. Until next time, choose yourself. Always choose yourself.